Introduce today Mr. Pete Land. As a retired Air Force colonel, Mr. Land knows about leadership. He served in many different positions in the Air Force, as well as he was also the director of management consultation for the Air Force, where he helped develop many leaders. He's published many different books and articles on leadership. One we are all very familiar with. We had to read it and write a paper on it recently. That's how to delegate effectively. He also published, let's make sure I get it right, I don't mess it up, Managing to Get the Job Done, and How to Build a Team, a winning team, and have fun doing it. He's in demand all over the world to come and speak and teach about leadership and management, and we're lucky to have him here today. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Pete Land.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon. I want to put a plug in for that trip to Thailand. I've been to Thailand. I was during the war, so it's different. It's different now than it was then. Very interesting place, beautiful country. I've also been on a mission trip to Panama where you actually do the kind of things you were talking about. If you choose to do that, it'll be a life-changing experience. It really will. I got so much more out of the trip to Thailand than we did helping this little church. But when you go and meet other people, live with them, provide services, training, love, if you will, it's life-changing. So I encourage you to look hard at that opportunity to grow and develop. Does everybody have a handout, note-taking guide? The back should be blank. So we'll have you write a few things down, but I'm not going to have you write a lot of stuff. But we want to keep you busy on this following material. Everybody got the tools? Okay. I want to teach you a listening skill. I learned this when I was a puppy many years ago. It's a technique that will allow you to listen at the graduate level. I call it listening on steroids. You learn to listen and listen to learn. I want to teach you a technique you can use it for right now and for the rest of your life. In any classes, any serious meetings, any opportunities you really want to learn through the listening media, this is a tool that will help you for the rest of your life. You went to the United Nations in New York, stood in the gallery, looked through the glass at those diplomats from every nation in the world. Do you think they're all speaking English or their native language? What do you think? The Russians are speaking Russian, the French are speaking French. Well, how do they communicate with each other to discuss the world's problems? I know everybody speaks 40 languages. If you look close with a microphone and a headset, someplace in that building is a very bright crowd of people called concurrent translators. They can listen on one language, speaking a different at the same time. You walk up to the wall switch, put your headset on. If you like English, put the switch on English and watch a Russian's mouth. His mouth starts moving, a half a sentence later, perfect English comes out of your headset. He stops, the mouth stops moving, the English stops. Or you can get what that Russian says in French, Chinese, Italian. The reason we can do that is the average speaking rate of most languages, say 200 words a minute, that's a good average. But this incredible brain between our ears can bring information in your ears, in your brain, and understand it 10 times faster. If I could talk that fast and did not slow the words, you could understand perfectly. Which means when you listen and you're not working very hard mentally, you can think about other things, the family, the hobby, the job, the class, right? I won't get a show of hands if everybody's left the room mentally in the last minute and embarrass myself. You can leave the room, come back, and visit right mentally. Here's what I want you to do. It's called double speak. Every word spoken in this room, for me or anybody asks a question, makes a comment, every word, you repeat that word to yourself the minute you hear it. Hello, hello, how are you? Good morning, good morning. You echo that word in your head. I say it, you say it again to yourself. The brain hears it 2 times. It packs double the brain cells. Now, believe it or not, if you're really focused and double speaking, you can't think about 6 other things that are going to distract you. You have to focus on this material. Okay? Okay? You should have heard that 4 times. Let's work it. Several years ago, I was in Budapest, Hungary. Workshop. 8 o'clock in the morning, I stood up in front of this group and I said good morning in English. A lady said good morning to her table at that same moment in Polish. A gentleman said good morning to his table in Hungarian, and somebody else said good English in Romanian. We had 4 languages. We all got through at 4:30, a half a sentence behind. So starting now, double speak everything in this room. Okay? Okay? Heard that 4 times. And really work at it. Here's why. Any course you take, any program you go to, any interaction you have in an educational environment, the value is not so much in what you heard, but what you retain and apply. Can you take it out of here and be a better leader tomorrow? That's the question. Research says the average listener who does not doublespeak, they can sit there and float through the system, at the end of the week, of the month, or whatever, but all they can really own and apply and retain is about 10%. If you just sit there and listen with your mind kind of in freewheeling. If you get it visually, an overhead, a flip chart, a handout or something, get a visual input, 15% you own. 20% if you do both. If I tell you and show you, and I'll be doing that, you'll get 20% of that. But it doubles, 40%. You can talk about it, discuss it, get with your colleagues, chat about it. 40% you'll own and be able to apply. That's still a failing rate of 60, but it doubles again if you share it with others. If you go back with a colleague, a roommate, a friend, somebody, and say, let me tell you what I learned today about leadership, coaching, whatever. When you do that, and explain it to them, and you'll have good notes if you need them, you got it. You know as much as I know about it. When you teach others about it, you teach it, you learn it. So you're not finished with today until you lock it down in a conversation with someone else. Everybody got it? What's the first bullet point on that page? Double speak to improve retention and application. Major point. Now, I want to separate a couple of terms for you. And I don't want anybody to get upset. It's not controversial, but I want to give some broad definitions of two major terms and see what the differences are about it. Education. We look at education in the broadest sense. It's a system where they transfer from teacher, from book to student, concepts and principles. So it's a transfer, write the notes, of concepts and principles. Fill in the missing words. Education is the transfer from the book, from the teacher to the student, of concepts and principles. Usually takes place in a classroom or lecture hall. Somebody's up talking, you're listening. That's the general environment. Now, what do you get out of that? What's in it for you? The output of education is knowledge. Fill it in. Knowledge, which means you know the concepts and you know the principles. Well, how do we know you know? How do we demonstrate our knowledge? Well, if you get a lecture on Monday and a test on Friday, you chance to pass the test Friday, they know you were there Monday. You do that for several years, and some spring day with a cap and gown, you work off state, give you his paper. Went to class, took the test, wrote the questions, answered the turn, and we'll demonstrate that by giving you a diploma and say you have an education in a particular field. And that's to be honored. Everybody got that. Training is very different. Training is defined as the transfer of skills. Fill it in. It's skill transfer. Usually training takes place on the job. And here's the exciting part. The output of training is performance, the ability to do it. To do it. Can you do it? I learned the difference between education, knowledge, concept, principle, training, ability to perform, performance. I learned the difference, God, that's 53 years ago now, when I was in Air Force pilot training, flying jets in the late 50s. Half of the day we were in a classroom teaching aerodynamics, structure, weather systems, knowledge, concepts, principles, take tests. But every day they strapped me in a jet airplane and said, Lieutenant, go fly that puppy. Shoot the approach, make the landing. You'll understand the profound difference between knowledge and skill, education and training. When you're 20,000 feet all alone in a single engine jet, you realize right then that the test scores on the classroom wall is not going to land that airplane. What lands the airplane? Skill lands the airplane, not knowledge. I know that. We had a few guys in our class that had a 4.0 GPA. Knew that stuff cold, very bright guys. But why would a guy with a 4.0 GPA bust out of pilot training? With a straight average. What happened?
Couldn't land the airplane.
He couldn't land the jet. And he is not a pilot today because he can't do it. Performance tends to be skill-based. Performance tends to be skill-based. Think of a carpenter to build a building like this, the lasting usefulness and beauty. He's out on the work site, he's got a board in the nail, he's got to put the nail in the board straight to make the building stand up straight. Runs over to his toolbox. What's he looking for in the toolbox? A wrench, a screwdriver? What's he looking for? A hammer. He has the tools he needs, and he knows when he needs a particular hammer tool. Well, I have a hammer, and I know when I need one. In fact, his hammer and mine are identical. You can't tell them apart. Well, the carpenter's out there. got the board, got the nail, got the hammer. And he hits a nail 3 times and he sets it for a generation and builds a building of lasting usefulness and beauty. I have the nail in the board in the mouth right, and I get that, and I hit my thumb and bend that nail every time. I don't do a very good job building buildings. What does he have that I do not have? Skills to use the tools. And I might have more education. Keep hitting my thumb. Now let me scare you. When you step into a leadership role, and some of you are going to be in it now, and if you're not, you're in this course, you'll be prepared better than your colleagues, you'll be in leadership roles. Let me scare you. When you go and assume a leadership responsibility, the people that work for you, work with you, and your colleagues don't care what you know about leadership. They don't care about one thing. When you sit down across the table, do good things happen with your skills. Can you lead them? Can you motivate them? Can you inspire them? Can you get them so connected they don't know the difference between work and play? Can you do it? And that's what leadership is about. Effective leaders lead. That's an active statement. Everybody got it? The big difference in education and training. Now, do you get training in college? Of course you do. You get writing, exercise, that's training. But the broad context. I know people who leave with degrees and they can't do squat because on the job they require you to perform skill sets. You have to get that when you get on the job. Okay. Leaders or trainers. On the back page of that paper should be blank. I want you to write the definition of training because one of leaders' major responsibilities is training. Here's the definition of training I want you to write down because it is so important. Write it down word for word, make it fresh, and we'll not be able to read your handwriting next week. Training means to make proficient. So instruction, and you got to practice. The key phrase is in a climate of high self-esteem. That is a profound statement. Get it clear on your notes. In a climate of high self-esteem. I'll demonstrate that a little bit later. When you set up an experience to train people, to coach them, to learn a new skill set, the purpose of it is to transfer the skills, but you don't have to write this down. You know this having lived a while. People learn more, learn faster, make fewer mistakes when their self-esteem is high. Now, I want to say something about self-esteem. Sometimes we get overboard and give them trophies for just showing up, and the honors, everybody gets a trophy and the ribbons and all that, where there was really no excellence demonstrated. That's not what I'm talking about. You know when you've earned something and it shows up in a trophy or a ribbon, you know. You know when you just got it for showing up. That diminishes that sort of stuff, and the self-esteem doesn't really have a good impact. But when you do something because you put in the effort, you did the work, you did the study, you did the homework, you came to class, you paid attention, you get an A or something, that's a confirmation of your effort. Now, think of something you're really good at doing, maybe part of a hobby or a job or something in class that you're just good at. All right, think of it. You don't have to brag and tell me, but I want you to look it up here in the frontal lobe, something that you're just good at. All right, everybody got it? Think about it. Feels good, doesn't it? I just lowered the stress in this room because stress and self-esteem run inversely. When I said, what are you good at? The stress went up, didn't it? A little bit. You say, I am so cool, but I'm really good, right? When you said that to yourself, I am very good at it, your self-esteem went up, and self-esteem and stress went inversely. I lowered the stress in this room by asking that question. You know, blood pressure and stress run parallel. When your blood pressure's up, your stress is up, your blood pressure's up. Converse is true. I've lowered the blood pressure in this room by saying, what are you really good at? Now, go back in time to the first time you did what you're good at, what you mastered, what you really excel at. People say, boy, he or she's really got that down. Go back to the first time you did it. You know what? You can't remember that. You know why? Because a healthy mind suppresses unpleasant experiences. Did you do it right the first time, or did you mess it up? You made a mistake. People go, right? You made a mistake. We all do. The first time is usually not a successful event. You could have said, I'm not going to do that again. That's embarrassing. People say, I'm not going to do that again. You could have done that and walked away. But you were mature enough and adult enough, maybe as a young person, to say this to yourself when you made that mistake. Self, I made a mistake, but that ain't no big deal. If I look closely, hiding in this mistake someplace, there's a lesson of value for me tomorrow. You'll dig around and find that lesson and use that lesson tomorrow. And the next day, the next lesson. And you got better and better and better. Is that right? And now you are very good at it. Write this down. This is one line I want you to own. The mistakes we make are usually temporary. The mistakes we make are usually temporary, not always. But the lessons they teach us are permanent. That's a good deal. The mistakes we make are usually temporary, but the lessons they teach us are permanent. That is why you're good at what you do. You went back to the well and got better and better every day. You know, I'm a pilot, still fly. I've been a pilot for 53 years, believe it or not. You should have seen my first landing in South Carolina when I made a landing for the first time. Before I landed the first time, I was 6'4". You know that? Pretty hard landing, right? Okay. There was an article written many years ago by Dr. Robert Katz, Harvard Business Review, and the article was entitled, "Skills Needed to be Successful in Leadership or Management." Notice it doesn't say knowledge, it says skills. The article's been Harvard Business Review for 50 years that I know of. If you take a graduate course on it, you got to read this article because it's a classic statement in leadership and management. He says there are 3 kinds of skills you need and 3 levels of management. The first skill we call is technical management, technical skills that has to do with equipment, computers, and the software, and machines, and all that. And you get that usually on the job as you get into it. The next one is called conceptual. I'll get to that in a moment. Conceptual has to do with long-range planning, what we call corporate citizenship. Does your organization do the blood drive, United Way? And what we call corporate relationships. How does my department get along with the next department? That's conceptual skills. The skill we're talking about today is called human skills. I've started the definition on the page. I'll give you the missing words. Human skills. Here's the definition of human skills. Ability and judgment working with and through people, including an understanding of motivation. What motivates people? Understanding of motivation. And the application of effective leadership. The application of effective leadership. Now, notice it says application of, doesn't say knowledge of, reading books and talking about it. It's applying it, which is skill-based. You got to be able to do effective leadership. And as we talk on this afternoon, we'll learn what effective really means in regard to leadership. Now, according to Dr. Katz, the 3 levels of management, supervisor managers are people who manage the non-management people, so the hourlies and so forth. They're the first line supervisor. Middle managers are the people who manage other managers, or starts the boss of the first line supervisor. And top management are the people who create the culture of the organization. They create what gets honored and what gets punished. They create the culture of the organization. It's not one person. It's a group of top leaders. The guideline I use as a management consultant, when the CEO calls a meeting to discuss policy, the people that come to that meeting are top management. It's not one person. It's the people who create the culture. What gets rewarded, what gets punished. According to Dr. Katz, if you're at first line supervision, you better know that technology cold, stay current, stay into the trade journals, stay into the manuals. You're going to have to train, inspire, and motivate the technical workforce. So the first line supervisor should have a very good grip on the technology. They should have a little bit about where it's all going, how it all fits together. Middle managers are balance of both, but here's what shocks people. Top executives do not get paid for technical skills. Knowledge, yes, but not skills. They ain't got to do it. Then they got to get you to do it, and other people to do it. They're in a different business. Let me prove that to you beyond a shadow of a doubt. You say, wait a minute, top executives don't have to have skills? General Motors had a parts plant in Bay City, Michigan. It was the worst parts plant in America by every measure of merit. It had quality problems and scrap and turnover and labor management fighting with each other. It was a disaster, losing money by the buckets. They tried all the conventional solutions to get it productive, and they couldn't. It was like a mudslide. They decided they were going to close the plant, shut it down, lay everybody off, ruin that little economy. As a last-ditch effort, get this, they hired a 59-year-old female psychology professor, Pat Kerrigan, her grandmother, and brought her in that plant as the General Motors of a parts plant. Never been in a plant in her life, didn't even know where the restroom was. And she walked in there as the general manager. Well, what's the recipe for disaster? They're gonna kill her. 18 months later, that was the #1 plant in America, that industry, by every measure. Highest quality, lowest unit cost, highest profits, labor management, holding hands, working together for the customer. Stabilized work, it was a great company. Tom Peters wrote a book called In Search of Excellence. You haven't read it, you should. He interviewed her and said, Pat, how in the world can you make this amazing turnaround? You don't know anything about parts. She said, Tom, I had never made a part, and I never planned to. And I know how to get people that do make parts to do it better, quicker, smarter, cheaper than they did yesterday, and love doing it. What skill did she bring in that building? Human skills, leadership, motivation. I was in the Michigan area and told that story, and somebody in the back of the room says, wait, Pete, you got to hear the rest of the story. My dad worked in that plant. It was the best job he ever had. He was in the union for 30 years, but he loved going to work. It was the greatest job he ever had. He said that there was a trouble plant in Los Angeles area. General Motors transferred Pat Kerrigan to the trouble plant in Los Angeles. That man told that audience in Michigan, when she left, grown men wept. 2 years later, it was the best plant in America, in Los Angeles. Turned it around. Still don't know anything about parts. Here's the sad story. She retired, moved back to Michigan. They put somebody else in charge of the plant. About a year and a half, 2 years later, they went bankrupt, they closed it and shut it down. And he knew a lot about parts. He said, I've had every job I know how to do. If you don't do it, get out of here, I'll fire you. And all he knew about was the technology. Not a clue of leadership and motivation. And they went bankrupt. Folks, I've done a little travel. I've been to 50 countries. I've done a workshop on 4 continents. My travels around the world, that's the problem. It's leadership, motivation, particularly at the higher levels, because they get there because they have great technical skills. When you get to be a good technician, say, well, anoint your supervisor or manager, totally different set of skill sets. Totally different. In fact, sometimes having the technology at gut level, it gets in the way of your leadership. I'll get to that later. It gets in the way of your leadership. Any questions on this? Does this make sense to you? How that puzzle fits together? I don't want to diminish education. I don't want to diminish technical skills. I would lose my license as a trainer if I didn't have at least one Teddy Roosevelt slide. That's what he said, and it's true. Most important ingredient is how you love the people. People skills. Now, the next bullet point on it has the word scotoma. Find that on your notes. Scotoma. S-C-O-T-O-M-A. What is a scotoma? The human brain has 5 sensory inputs: to smell, to taste, to touch, to hear. We function as we perceive environment through our sense organs. I'm not going to feel this table because I see and perceive. Here's the problem. There's so many stimuli, noises, smells, sounds, colors, that we cannot perceive them all, which is a rational awareness, without going crazy. You'd be insane if you had to perceive everything in your environment. In order to maintain our sanity, there's a part of the brain back here called the reticular activating system, and it monitors those sensory world day and night. It only allows 2 broad categories or groups of stimuli to get through the reticular activating system up to the brain where we perceive and respond. First one is called high threat, fill in the missing word. If it's a threat, we tend to perceive it. You have a pencil? Okay. The word threat. If it's a threat, we perceive it. Here's a threat. Sitting in a crowded theater with 500 strangers in the dark. Get a whiff of smoke under your nose. That stimuli gets to our reticular activating system and brain says automatically, that's a threat, you perceive it, respond accordingly, and everybody gets out of it. Second broad category is called high value. If it's important, high value, we tend to perceive it. But here's the problem. If it's not a threat, not important, we tend not to perceive it. Example, man and wife in bed, next room, a 2-week-old baby, a little toddler, right out of the hospital. During the night, thunder and lightning, planes and trains, lots of noise, lots of auditory cues, everybody's sound asleep, getting a good rest. At 2 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of a thunderstorm, that little baby rolls over and gets that breathing off about that much. Is that woman going to wake up? See her coming to that bed like a child. Says, oh, they get breathing. The husband will say, oh, boy, he will hear, she will every time. And no computer can do that. Now, to be fair with the guys, it's 4 o'clock in the morning and not in the normal night pattern. He gets up and says, I think I heard somebody on the patio. He will hear it, she might not. There's no computer can do that. Scotoma is a perceptual filter. It blocks from our awareness things that are not important and not a threat. We just don't even, not even aware of it. Perceptual filter. One of the best examples of a scotoma. My last assignment in the Air Force, 1982, was Vice Commandant of the Air War College. That's where Dr. Klein and I worked together. We bring allied officers in from all over the world. We spend about 9 months in Montgomery at the Air War College, and they go back to their country. There are 80 there. We had a dinner for allied officers. There are 80 different people from different countries visiting the War College for a year. And I was there in 82 as a Vice Commandant. We had a gentleman in the 1982 class from Nigeria. He was a brigadier general of the Nigerian Air Force, a pilot, and he could have played pro golf the next day. He was that good a golfer. He could have played the tour. One Saturday morning, he was on the fairway where he usually was, and 3 of his friends were, and one of his flights are all over the weeds and the bushes where I usually am. And they're waiting on him. He's waiting on him to find a golf ball in the bushes. And after a few minutes, he gets bored. He walks over the bushes. He stops and looks at it and says, "Joe, look down, there's a snake." Look down, there's a snake, Joe, look down. And Joe looks down, and now he sees visible underneath his feet, a 6-inch tail that was attached to a 6-foot water hawk, and he knew what to do then. Get out of there. Got back on the golf cart, turned to the Nigerian and says, "That was amazing. 3 of us were walking around looking down. You stepped and saw that little snake tail between my feet, 20 feet away. How did you do that?" He said, "Remember, in Nigeria, you don't see the snake first. You die." You do not have a scotoma, perceptual filter for a snake, a part of a snake, anywhere in the world as long as they live, and the hearing, the vision, no better now is perception. Now, what's that got to do with leadership? Everything. I'm going to demonstrate something a little bit later about the cues you get non-verbally, and those are indications of willingness, motivation, skills, and all that. And it'll be like a little snake tail. If you turn your head and look away, you won't even see you get bitten by that snake. But if you're paying attention and focus, you'll see and perceive the information, and leaders have to get that all the time. People won't come up and say, "I do not want to do this, I'm turned off." They won't do that. They'll send you other messages, but you got to be clean enough and quick enough to pick up on and respond quick. I had to get permission from Dilbert to show you this little cartoon, but it really makes my point about scotoma. This is copyrighted, I'll show it. 2 guys walking along, one turns to the other one and says, "So if a salesperson made an idiotic promise to the customer, now it's my job to fix it." The guy says, "The brain is an amazing thing. Are you saying that if I use the untapped power of my brain, the solution?" "No, I'm saying my amazing brain fills out your boring story so I can enjoy my own walk." Classic. Any question of what a scotoma is? Perceptual filter. If it's not a threat to you, or not of value, we don't even notice it. And if we don't notice it, we can't live with it. Can't respect it. Everybody got that? Now, the next bullet points, we've heard all your life the words organizational performance, organizational performance. The truth is organizational performance, they sit there. It's the people that perform. And when people perform in groups and departments and line them up and hold hands, we'll call that organizational performance, and customers give you money for that. Get you stay in business one more day. They get to vote with their dollars. The teamwork, the performance. If organizations are not performing, people are not performing. If people are not performing, there are only 4 major reasons why they aren't. These are the big 4. You have to deal with them every day in any sort of leadership role. The first broad category for poor performance, impaired performance, is lack of skill, which means they hadn't been trained, or lack of knowledge, they do not understand. That's the first bullet, lack of skill or lack of knowledge. Now, that's the first part. Some of you have jobs, don't you? Have part-time jobs, summer jobs, right? Are you good at it? You're pretty good. I see you, man. I'm pretty good. I do a pretty good job. You went through the learning curve, got better every day. Pretty soon you say, "Oh, go with him. He's really good. He knows how to do it." Now, if you're in a leadership role, look over your shoulder at the people who are coming through the learning curve you went through last year. They're going to step on the same rakes. You know, everybody stepped on a rake, Banks and Christian right here. When you started out in that job as a rookie, you stepped on rakes, made mistakes, you know, right? And every day you got better and better. And now you're so good, they say, "Boy, be like this person." Right? Now you have people walking in that same track you were walking and they report to you. They're your employees or your subordinates. Here's your job, and I'm dead serious. You're not done until the people who work for you are better at that job than you were when you got promoted because you were the best. You leave your skills behind in the next generation. If it took you 6 months, they should learn it in 3. Create a culture where you are constantly upgrading their skills, making them better at their job, giving them, and I'll talk about how to do that. But I've had people tell me, oh, that sounds pretty good to me. But if they know as much as I do, they won't respect me because they got to respect me. See, they come in and ask me questions, I give them answers they don't know, and they think I'm cool. So I can't tell them what I know. They won't respect me. You're about to see where that train's going. Let me ask you a question. What's your first name?
Seth.
Huh?
Seth.
Seth? You work for me, okay? I'm good at the job that you have. You look down and say, "That's Pete Land, he's good at my job." I might be good, not be good at my present job because I've only been there a week, but I'm good at the job, and you and I both know it, okay? So, you come in to me and ask me a question, I give you the answer, and a little bit of a talk down, you know, because I'm smarter than you are, you know, I don't, you're me, okay? You come back tomorrow and I give you a little bit more of that sort of short shrift, you know, all right? How's your self-esteem now, high or low?
Pretty low.
It's going down, isn't it? Stress going up. He'll stay about 2 weeks, then go find a job he'll enjoy. Didn't want to work, his problem, you know. Now let me change my mode and leave my ego outside where it belongs. And I'm going to do things in such a way as you learn from every time you come to my office. Instead of telling you, I ask questions. Well, what would be the good side? What would be the upside? What do you think advantages are? And through coaching, which is asking questions, I'll guide you to a conclusion that you say, hey, that's pretty good. And I thunk of it myself. I thunk of it, right? That's your self-esteem now. If I'm very good at that, you'll be better than I am. He looks in the mirror and says, I'm good, I need better than my boss. You'll be to work on time. You'll stay late. You'll have a great day. Question. If I was the second boss and did everything I could to make you good at your job and your colleagues respect you and the customers like it, would you respect me? Guess what? People walk through a wall for somebody that'll do that, not the one that stands there and says, well, you're dumber than I am. You get your head on backwards if it's all about you. It's not about you. It's about making them better than you. Everybody got that? It takes a grown-up to do that. It can't be some kid out there trying to look better than each other, competing. A mature person focuses on the mission and the people and gives them the skills to excel at that mission, and they will follow you through anything. Got it? Now, let me do a little demonstration. I'll pick on this young lady here. I'm going to demonstrate something. What's your first name?
Kelly.
Kelly. Kelly with red hair. Kelly's just joined my organization about 2 days ago, and she's coming in, and I've got to train her. I don't have time for this, and this girl doesn't know squat, you know. So I'm going to ask you a simple question, and you just say no, okay? You know how to use an FTP?
No.
She doesn't know how to use an FTP. How's your self-esteem? It's okay? It's spiraling down in it? Well, let me show you how to do it. It's really simple. See how you said that? You try it. I did it at my level of proficiency. Now, don't look at the pen, look at the finger. And I did it at my level of proficiency, and I said, you try it. Where did I set the bar for the rookie? Right up here. What's her chances of succeeding or failing? She's going to get it and saw it backwards the other way. What is your problem? It's not that, you know, you having a good day? No. Okay. Pretty soon, she will say, my boss is a jerk. He's a jerk. And she won't learn it because the self-esteem is low. She's embarrassed. And pretty soon she'll find another job. In 2 weeks now she'll be gone and say, oh, probably she just couldn't get her in the job. And I got to start all over with somebody else, another Kelly. Everybody see that? Now, let me leave my ego outside where it belongs and see if I can't create a climate where I'm going to deal with the employee. You have to tell them what you want them to do in language you understand. You have to show them and have to let them do it. And while they're doing it, you're coaching. Okay? Now, I'm going to turn around. There's a different guy here now. And I'm going to say, have you ever used one of these things? We call it a felt tip pen. It's called an FTP. Have you ever used one of them? Not a problem. My job is to teach you how, and you'll learn it pretty easy. First thing, one of the neat things about it, for years we had fountain pens. And fountain pens, you had a jar, and you had to get the liquid in, ruin your shirt if it leaked, you know. And then when you used a fountain pen, you had to get a blotter. If you didn't, it would smear and the signature wouldn't be legible. But watch this. I want to make a mark. Touch it. Just a slight amount. That was too quick. In about 2 seconds, it'd be dry. Okay? Now, the good news is it dries like that. The bad news is if the cop comes off and you leave it off for a matter of 30 minutes, you can throw it in the trash. So the trick is keeping the top and it snaps into airtight. Okay? So let me come to this side and show you how we do this. I'll walk through it slowly and then let you do it. You hold the dark end firm. It's easy if you twist. So you twist and pull a little bit, and it'll separate easily. Do 180 degrees with this end, insert it, and these will bind. You'll be having it available all the time. When you finish using it, the minute you finish using it, reverse the process, and then you click it down like that. See? Got it? Now, what I want you to do is use your words to control my hands. Tell me what to do, and I will do what you tell me to do with my hands, okay?
Okay.
All right. Now, this thing costs $10,000, so nobody's going to get hurt and not going to damage anything. Okay. Walk me through it, Kelly. What do you do?
Okay, hold,
Okay.
hold firm.
Right.
Flip 180,
Right.
flip inside, then
Okay.
stick it into the cap,
Good.
and then you can ride with it.
Okay.
And
Good.
when you're done, you can move it a bit,
Very
and do
good.
the reverse process.
Right.
And put it back in.
What words did I just use? What were my words?
Very
What was I saying?
You were after
Right?
good.
Okay. Okay, you got it? That was pretty good. Now, what I want you to do is put your hands where mine were and talk. Now, don't go too fast, Kelly. Go real slow.
Okay.
She can't go fast. Okay? Talk through it using your hands where mine were, but let's go. See how it works.
Hold firmly and separate the two parts.
Right?
And then flip the pin 180 and insert the pin into the cap so you can
Right.
have the cap empty.
Use
And
it.
then hold firmly again.
Right.
And separate the two parts. Reverse process. Put the pin back
Everybody
in.
clap.
Give it-
First time you've done that? Great job. Where's your
That's
self-esteem?
right.
Where's your self-esteem now?
Hi.
Stressed down, so to speak. How about the class applauding for you? Or your boss giving you one of those dummies, huh? Folks, don't leave here and say, I saw two grown-ups put a cap on a pin. What this was about? It was about leadership, training, and coaching. Everybody see what we just did? Now, here's the secret. Don't you don't hear anything, here's the hard part. When you're teaching somebody something, the reference of performance is not you, because you're up here, they'll never get there. They do it too, you talk about the 8 they missed. The reference for their performance is what they did yesterday, the last iteration. Look at their 7 yesterday and work towards the 8. But if you're always saying, I'm up here and you're down here, and that's a reference standard, they'll never get there. So get out of the way, let your ego in the hallway where it belongs, and talk about their success between yesterday and today. It'll be incremental. And then you build on that, reinforce that, and take the next step in this place. And if I'm good, she'll be better than I am at that project. Everybody got it? Now, I asked you, have you ever done this before? And I told you to say no. In training, you don't spend time and money teaching people things they know and already do quite well. And you don't spend time and money teaching things they don't need. It's what they need and don't know. So I identified a deficit, trained against that deficit. The next missing word is you always train against the deficit. Don't forget to put the word deficit in there. On the A, lack of skill and knowledge, you train against the deficit. You identify the skill gap and train against that gap and reference their previous iteration for success and progress. Everybody got it? Now, you got to close that switch first. You can't do anything else so they know how to do it. Once you've trained them, you go to the next level, and that is called imbalance of consequences. You might want to fill that in. There's an imbalance of consequences. Let me unpack that for you. Everybody works every day for consequences. What's one we like every 2 weeks, every week? What's that consequence? Money, pay and benefits. Pay and benefits are positive and they're tangible. You can count the dollars in the kitchen. Positive, tangible consequence is money. Okay. Are there any positive, intangible consequences for working? What are positive but intangible? Can't touch them.
Confidence.
Say it.
Confidence.
Huh?
Confident.
Confidence? How did you feel after the second time?
Often.
Her self-esteem went up. Stress went down. That feeling she got when you all applauded was a positive, intangible consequence for working with me. Got it? Are there any negative, tangible consequences in the workplace? About to let a reprimand, termination notice, you're fired. It's right there in your record. Are there any negative, intangible consequences in the workplace? Being embarrassed, yelled at, Don't, you had a negative intangible consequence when that made you look stupid, you know? That feeling, gosh, man. That was a negative intangible consequence. Now hold that thought. Everybody has in their head a set of mental balance scales. On this side of the balance scale, we value our contribution to our organizations every day with our skills and abilities, our sweat equity. And over here, we put all the consequences. We do this, we get a paycheck. We do this, get benefits. We do this, we get a pat on the back or a high five or an email saying thanks. We do this, we get fussed at, we get yelled at. Everybody is assessing that consequence system. And as long as what I give to the organization with my skills and abilities is worth about what I get, keyword, in my value system, I'll be willing and motivated to show up and do it again. But if it ever gets to an imbalance, I'm putting a lot more than I'm getting out of it. Motivation and willingness go south with the speed of light. And many times they won't tell you. Well, I get a better job, I get a better commute, I get a better salary. They won't tell you, but many times what they leave is the consequence system is out of balance. When it's in balance, they're motivated. When it's out, they're not. Now here's the problem. A client called me up from the Midwest several years ago. I said, Pete, we got a problem. True story. I got a big promotion going on for sales. The sales department is flat. The VP of sales and nothing's happening. Not doing anything. It's a real flat program. And I want you to come out and motivate the sales force to get on and finish the sales project. So I went out and met with him, went to his office. And so I walked into the headquarters building. I looked at the vice president, president, reserve signs, and the word president had a big Cadillac sitting there, you know, Mercedes, whatever. I met with him. I walked in his office, and he had a little putting green in there, and the Golf Digest magazine, and all that sort of stuff. And he said, Pete, here's the problem. I got a promotion going on. It's going to cost me $5,000. The top salesman and their spouse, and the vice president of sales and his spouse, and me and my wife, we're going to go to Bermuda and play golf for 5 days on some of the most beautiful golf courses. It's going to cost me an arm and a leg, and nobody's selling. So get out there and jack up the sales force. I said, okay, went across the street, walked across the sales building. I looked for the parking lot signs, the vice president of sales and all that, and there were campers, trucks, Field and Stream magazines and all that. You get the picture? There wasn't any fancy cars, it was just campers, pickup trucks. I walked in the lobby, Field and Stream magazine, there was a stuffed animal on the wall, you know. I met with the VP of sales, he's got all this memorabilia. He's not in the coat and tie, he's casually dressed. Real nice guy. And I said, what's going on? Well, you know, promotion going on. I said, what do you mean? If we get out and really go after this quarter, and somebody wins a sales promotion, then that person and their spouse, and me and my spouse, are going to have to go to Bermuda, and my president and his spouse, and embarrass myself for we playing that stupid golf. I'll do anything for doing that. You see the problem? The consequences are not in value for the receiver. You need to do anything to keep from going to play golf with his boss. So I said, well, let's blue sky. What would you do? If you were king for a day, what would you do if you could select? What do you mean? Oh, come on. He said, you know what, Pete, when I was a kid growing up, my dad and I used to go hunting. He was a great hunter, taught me all about hunting. When I was about 15, he told me one day, we were out in the woods, he said, son, if you're ever lucky enough before you die, you'll get to go big game hunting in Wyoming with a professional guy. That will be the pinnacle of your hunting career. He was hyperventilating talking about that. He said, okay, went back across the street, vice president, CEO. He said, I have a suggestion to you. Let's have 2 rewards or consequences. One is the golf trip, or the trip to Wyoming with a professional guide and hunting. He said, who wants to walk around the woods all day? I said, all the salespeople. They set records that quarter and knocked the top right out of the chart. Why? Because the consequences shifted back into balance and the value of the receiver, not the giver. Now, I wonder who the golfer was. He gave away what he wanted. It doesn't matter. It's what they need. You got to know well enough to know that they're hunters or fishing or golfers or whatever. Now, there's a bullet point that says you cannot motivate an untrained person. Got it? Motivation is driven by consequences. The carrot is the money and the praise, and the stick is the reprimand and determination. So I want to demonstrate. You have to be a pilot. You have a private license. Okay, nice guy, but he's not a pilot. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to motivate him with some consequences. What I want you to do, have an airplane out here, just really down here. I want you to go fly. I'm tied up. I got a class. So you're on your own. It's called solo, you know. So here are the keys. It's over in Hangar 3. I want you to go fly my airplane this afternoon. It's pretty simple, really. take off, come out, shoot an approach back into Atlanta, and then park it. It's no big deal. Now, if you do that, the positive consequence is $10 million tax-free. You'll have your attention. 10 million, that's a big carrot, isn't it? Now, stick, if you don't do it, you're going to jail for 20 years. You'll have your attention. That's a real stick, isn't it? Is he going to fly today, yes or no? Why not? My God, some more man.
Lack of skill.
Lack of skill or knowledge, right?
Balance of consequence.
Consequences don't create skills. Only training creates skills. But here's an exciting part. If you train them, they love to do what they're good at. So good training is inherently motivational. You'll be doing that project or that piece of equipment for fun. So the better you train them, the better you leave the skills behind, the easier it is to motivate because they love doing it. They're so good at it. Everybody got it? Consequences only work when the skills are in place. Then you know about a trip or hunting or whatever. Everybody got it? Key concept that we own that. The third reason people don't do what you have to do is called task interference. On the back of that handout that I gave you, there's a blank piece of paper on the back. I want to draw a picture, and I want to have you draw that on your paper. So I'm going to draw this, you draw it. There's a job. Every job in the world requires skills, so I want to put skills in this job. I don't know of a job that doesn't require skills. You all should be writing this down. And every job in the world requires tools or resources. I don't know of a job that doesn't require skills and tools. Now, let's make a system out of this. I'm going to make an input coming into this job. This is an input coming into the job. The reason the job exists is to take an input, add value to that input with skills and tools, and make an output of greater or higher value than the input, and they get paid for the added value. Everybody got that? Input, processes with skills and tools, add value, output. Now, if we go to the top half of this circle, we'll call this internal to the organization or the department, and the bottom is external. We have below here is external, above here is internal. To the left, my left is input, and this is output. Everybody see that? Okay. My administrative assistant, Barbara, has a job. What skill would she need to be able to have to hold that job? Give me one of her skill sets. She's a great typist. I call them the flying fingers.
Good
If
communicator.
typing is the job, is the skill set, what are her tools? The computer. The paper, that's a tool. The electric power is a tool. The desk, the chair, you got all that? The system of tools that she uses to do that job. So she has tools and skills. I write a letter to Dr. Klein, and I've done that a few times. It's a draft. I'll write it and give it to her. She sees that draft letter as an input internal to the company. It's an internal input to her. She takes the internal input, add value with typing skills and tools, sends me a typed letter, perfect job. That's an internal output to Barbara, and she gets paid to do that. Everybody with me? No excitement there at all. I get an internal input from her, which is a typed letter. Pick up my tool, my pen, and add value with my signature, sign it, give it back to her. She gets a signed letter. Another internal input. She makes an external output and mails it to one in the file cabinet. And while I was going on, the phone rang, which is an external input, we got an email. She is in the business of taking inputs, adding valuable skills and tools, and making outputs. She gets paid for that. Now you can put a person or a whole company there. Everybody got it? Now, when the computers fail, they go beep, says I quit, you know. One day I'm writing, she's typing, I'm signing, she's mailing me high performance, high productivity. In her office I heard beep, the computer crashed. At that moment, Barbara had task interference, which is a breakdown in the resource side of that equation. She knew how to type, was willing to type, but the computer failed. What do? We train or motivate? We get the sucker fixed. Maintenance, backups, spares, contract, service, repairs. Everybody see that? It's a different set of problems, a whole different set of solutions. I wish it were that simple, but it isn't. I'm working on something, I'm writing letters, writing on the phone, doing this, and I'm striking them, and I think, okay, I slap it on the desk, I say, Barb, I gotta get this letter out by 3 o'clock. Well, it takes 10 minutes for her to type the letter. And I didn't give her the draft letter until 1 minute to 3, did we make it? She had task interference, but she lagged. And And whose fault was it? My fault. Her boss did not do his job. Okay, she's up in Birmingham, Montgomery, I'm down here, she got all that to type that letter. She opens up the folder, and I've written so badly, it's just scribble. She gave me the thing I've written. Whose fault is that? It's my fault, but here's the problem, I'm her boss. My name's on the sign out front. Sometimes when we don't do what we should be doing to support our people, they're a little reluctant to supervise us and say, Pete, you're the most disorganized toad I've ever worked for. Sometimes they're reluctant to give us feedback. If you really want to be a good leader, you got to look in the mirror and say, am I doing everything I ought to be doing to ensure my people can do what they need to do? Are my inputs timely? Are they clear and concise? That's an input for them. And if they don't get it, they got task interference. Everybody know what task interference means? Totally different set of problems, different set of solutions. The last of the big four is called feedback. Feedback. Every healthy system needs feedback. Ken Blanchard wrote a book, and he's endorsed my books, I'm proud to say. He said, feedback is the breakfast of champions. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. Let's imagine for a moment, and I'm going to talk to Barbara about performance. And I want to give her some feedback. There's two kinds. Positive, which is praise, affirmation, pats on the back. And there's also called corrective. It's not called negative feedback. It's called corrective feedback. It's a different word. Corrective has a better ring than negative. Or criticism. Everybody with me? Draw this on a piece of paper. There's a vertical and a horizontal. Draw that. The horizontal represents time, T-I-M-E. And time is always going that way. The vertical represents performance or productivity. I'll call it productivity. This is about it. Productivity from low to high. So productivity from low to high, time going this way. Everybody got that so far? Productivity is the vertical, time is the horizontal. Now, right along here someplace, draw what I would call the zone of acceptable performance. Make that little shaded area. The zone of acceptable performance. Okay? Now, someplace on there, it doesn't have to be in this same spot, but draw a little tree that sort of represents your tree that looks something like that, with 4 branches. Please do that now. Draw a little tree with 4 branches. We'll look at that a little bit later. 4 branches. Now, write this phrase down. It's not a mistake. People do not do jobs. Write that down. People do not do jobs. Write that down, please. And I'll finish it for you. People do not do jobs. Now, here's the rest of the sentence. They do tasks. T-A-S-K-S. What you do all day long is task. The job is an array of tasks. I look at my secretary's office, she's not doing her job, she's doing one of the tasks. She's on the phone, she's emailing, finances, airline reservations. I look in there, she's doing one of her tasks, and she must have 50 different tasks. Some she does every day, like answer the phone. Some she does infrequently, the taxes. But what people do every day is they do tasks. Now, they perform at the task level, that's where you lead. You lead at the task level, they perform at the task level. You don't lead at the job level, you lead at the task level. Now, Barbara has a task of type letters, one of her many tasks. I write it up, give it to her. Hey, Barb, I need this letter by 3 o'clock. Let's assume I've written it clean at this time. This tree represents a task in the forest of her job. She's got 50 trees or 50 different tasks, and I'm going to talk about one of them, and this one's called type letters. So I'm going to look at her at the task level, and the task is type letters, and that's the tree. The tree has 4 branches. The task has 4 dimensions or standards. The first branch on this tree is called quantity. There's a quantitative standard. How many letters do I need? There's always a quantitative expectation. how many copies, how many of this. There's always a quantitative standard. Write down the word quantitative. The next branch on the tree is called quality. There's a qualitative standard, no mistakes, no defects, no errors. So there's a quantitative piece and a qualitative piece. The third branch is called cost effective. Use of resources, cost effective. Don't take 2 hours to type a letter that should take 10 minutes. Don't waste 50 pieces of paper getting the letter out. Not cost effective. And the last branch on the tree or dimension of any task is called timeliness, punctuality, deadlines. You have that every day. Don't you have to have your papers in on time? You have timeliness standards. One of the timeliness standards people have trouble with sometimes is getting to work on time. 8 o'clock is the timeliness standard. They come in at 8:15, wonder why the boss is upset. The customer's waiting on you, so you're waiting on the customer. Okay, everybody see that? Now, you're going to be giving feedback, which is a critical leadership skill. You give her the draft, give it to her. Hey, Bart, I give it at 8:15, give it to her. Can you get this letter by 3 o'clock? She lays on my desk a perfect letter. This will be qualitative, quantitative. This is quantitative. I need 2 letters. That represents 2. This is 1 below. That's 2 letters. So she's at the standard. So the reference standard for quantity is 2 letters. And she made it by putting 2 letters on my desk. But this one is quality. Quality is no typos. That letter does not have a single blemish, no typos. That's it right there. What if she put a typo on my desk? It'd be down here someplace. Third branch on the tree is called cost effective. 10 minutes is about right. She did it in 8 minutes. She nailed it. She got it in the standard. 8 minutes would be a little bit better. Now I asked for it for 3 o'clock. That's when I needed it. That was the time in the standard. At 10 o'clock, she laid on my desk a perfect letter, 1 to mail, 1 to file. At 10 o'clock. Where's 10 o'clock on this chart? Right up here. Where's 9 o'clock? That's even better, because that is good. Now watch this. 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and here's tomorrow. You see that? She met all the standards and exceeded 1 of timeliness. Now I want to give her some feedback. Here's the way you do it. You don't say, you're doing a good job. See, I'm thinking job, she's thinking forest, she's thinking tree. I need to define the job so she knows what I'm talking about. So the first thing I do is I define what she did that I appreciate at the task level and at the dimension of the task. Hey, thanks for bringing this letter early. That was what I want to honor, the early dimension. Everybody see that? Next, I want to add value, make sure we know what difference it makes. I'll say, hey, thank you for bringing this letter early, Barb. Give me a chance to read and think about it before I had to go to my meeting at 3 o'clock. That's the value again. She'd be listening to that, don't you think? Now, I've set the tone. She knows what I'm talking about. I say, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Say thanks. But if I just come in and say thanks, you don't know what I'm talking about. I left my car in a parking lot lounge. What is he talking about? But if you talk about the performance and the value of things, it makes big sense. What do you got? That's how you get positive feedback. But they did the value. Did it save time, improve cost, reduce costs, improve safety, so improve quality? There was some benefit that flowed to them for doing it. Got it? Everybody with me? What they did at the task level, the value, thanks for doing it. Yeah. It wouldn't be fair to you if you only learn how to give positive feedback. I'm going to show you how to give corrective feedback, and this is work. It's real effort. Corrective feedback, not negative feedback. The report was due to me on the 12th, and she gave it to me on the 14th, 2 days ago. Everybody see that? This was a standard. This was a performance. Now, I couldn't say, what'd you do wrong? What is your problem? Here's how you give corrective feedback, and it requires some coaching skills. The first thing, you do it in private, never in front of other people. Short of an emergency, somebody's going to get hurt or burned or injured, you deal with it, of course, but the fact that you lost your temper, they upset you, you got blamed for their performance, and you're blowing off steam, doesn't count. You can't do that as a leader. The first thing you do is you define what they did at the task level and the dimension of the task. I would say, Barbara, as you know, that report is due to me on the 12th, and yours is dated the 14th. Supposed to get to work at 8 o'clock, you got to work at 8:30. I needed 4 copies, I only got 2. See what I'm doing? You put the standard and then the reference against it. Dealing with people in the work site, you're supposed to wear protective equipment, you don't have yours on, Joe. You always do that. And then you say something to separate the doer from the deed, and you say, and I'm very surprised, Barb, you're never late. Rather than that's just like you're always late, hear the difference? I could say, and I'm very surprised. And I ask a 2-word question. What happened? Write the word what happened down. What happened is a neutral question. What happened means I want to know what occurred to keep you from being on time like you usually are. That's what the advice said to me. Well, the computer went down and I had to get some parts ordered from out of town. And she would say, by the time the parts got here, I finally got it done. What was her problem when she said the computer went down? What problem is she looking at? What do we call that? It's task interference, that's what happened. How about this one? Well, I know, Pete, that I had never done it before, and I really didn't understand how to do it. And so when I finally figured it out, it was kind of slow, so I just really couldn't get it done in the time I had because I didn't know how. What is that telling me? Bingo, falls right in there. See that? If it's a training problem, you have a training solution, isn't it? She said, well, the computer went down. I said, okay, I'm going to get the contract to have spares on site here, so the next time it fails, you'll be able to put the component in, give you the training, and we'll order another spare. See that? So many people say, here's what you did wrong, why didn't you do it? What is your problem? Or what do I get defensive and argumentative? Those are corrective feedback issues. Okay, we've got the 4 performance dimensions of lack of skill or knowledge is the skill piece, consequence imbalance is the motivation piece, task interference is the resources or tools piece, but feedback is also part of the consequence system. So I want to take the top 3 and talk about how these interrelate. We'll use a lot of this page here. Let's assume we have somebody who is very skilled at something. I mean, they wrote a book on it, they're experts, they can teach it, whatever. So on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 or 0, they don't know what to do, 10, they're very good. You multiply a person's ability by their level of willingness, motivation, consequences. A 0 is they come in, call in sick when they're not, they do the minimum, I'm on break, you know the type. It's not my job. A 10, they'll come in when you need them, I'll be happy to do it, I love working here, can I give you a hand? A 10 is highly motivated because the consequences make sense, and a 0 is I ain't doing it. Let's assume we find this person's not only highly skilled, but highly motivated. Have all the resources and tools they need. No problem with resources. You know, we have a projector. What if this thing fails? Guess what? I have a spare right there. So I don't have task interference. I do not have task interference because I have all the tools we need. Do the math. Can anybody handle that math? Those are the input variables for any organization. I don't care if it's a nonprofit or a major military organization or business. 10 times 10 times 10. What comes out for the customer? Can anybody handle that math?
1,000.
And they pay you for that. They give you money for that. But let's imagine that we have a highly trained person, highly motivated, but the projector fails and I don't have a backup projector. What's the performance coming out of that company? 10 times 0.
0.
10 times 10 times 0 is what?
0.
Nothing. That's a precursor to bankruptcy. They are wired in series, not additive. Everybody got that? That's a profound statement. The better you train them, the better equipment, the better you motivate them, the more money you make, the more success you have, open more stores, people are having a great time. But if any one of those goes soft on them, it's kind of mushy. Well, we didn't have anything to train them with until we got problems. On the bottom of that page, it has the letters D-A-R. D-A-R. Let me tell you what they mean. The letter D stands for decisions. Fill in the word decisions. Decisions come from the mental choices we make. Decisions are made up in your brain. You made probably 500 already today. Can we get up? What are you going to wear? What class? What are you going to do? You speak somebody not? All of those decisions you make take place up here. Decisions lead to activities. Fill in the word activities. Activities come from the decisions we make. I'm hoping that you make a decision, do the activity or learn and listen to this workshop. Take it with you. read it over, think about it, talk about it. I hope you make that decision, activity. Activities lead to inevitable results. Results come from activities, not from decisions. It's the results that matter. Now, if you're getting a good result by your decision activity link, and you're getting a good result, DAR, if you're getting a good result, keep doing that and do what you can to get that activity done even better. Because the activity gave you the result. If you decide you want to have good grades, the activity is you have to go do your homework, come to class, pay attention, read the books and all that. That's the activity. And the consequence for doing the homework and doing it, you get an A or a B in the course, right? What if you decide, well, I'm too busy, I want to watch TV or whatever. You don't do that activity. What do you get for that? You flunk out. You tell the world I couldn't finish school because I flunked out. And the choice was made when you had to turn that TV on or turn it off. Pick up the book or pick up something else. You made those choices. If you find that the results you're getting are not as good as you want, you got to change the activity, and they tend to be skill-based. Like listening there, focusing, getting conscientious about your work. You buy the result when you make the decision activity. You get it. It comes with the package. You can't do this activity to get a different result. You're connected. When you realize that, it changes your life. It really does. Now, one thing I want to write down, this is a little bit controversial, but write it down. I want to talk about the difference in activities and behavior. Or attitudes and behavior. Activity, attitudes. Write down the word attitudes. They come from our values and beliefs. Attitudes take place in our head and our heart. They're created by values and beliefs. Let's assume I have a belief system of Methodism. And I go to this building, it's got a tall point and a thing on the cross like that. Is that Methodism? That's a symbol of Methodism. It's not Methodism. Methodism here and in the heart. But the symbols we have are not the values. That's the evidence symbols of them. Okay, we have Jewish Star David or whatever. Okay. Behavior is what you do, what you say, how you do. Behavior is what people see. They don't see your values and beliefs. They see your behavior. Values and beliefs are what drive your behavior. Or what people witness is your behavior. Can you betray a value in your behavior? Of course you can. If you don't value honesty, you can be a crook. Behave as a crook. But let me ask you a tough question. Are you judging me right now? Are you judging me, yes or no? Are you judging me? Yeah. You judging me my beliefs and values, my attitude, and my behavior. You judging me on what? That's all you get, is my behavior. Now here's the question. Whose standards and values are you using to judge my behavior? My standards or your standards? Now wait a minute. Are you using your standards? Are you using hers? Wait a minute, we got male, female, everything. How in the world can you judge me on your standards and we're all different? It's not fair. Guess what? Leaders get judged every day. And they decide whether you're leading. And if they decide in their values that you're leading, they can't help but respond with following behavior. But if they look at that and say, that jerk is selfish, self-centered, everything's about them, they take all the credit for my work, if they see that behavior, you won't measure up as a leader and they won't follow you anywhere. Got it? They judge you and evaluate you every day, all day long, and they use their standards. And if they perceive that your behavior meets what their expectation of leadership is, they fall in line and follow. They can't help it. But the converse is true. You can betray that very quickly by letting some of those behaviors that are not reflecting the leadership. One of the key tricks of leadership is coaching. And coaching is asking questions. And I'm going to have you ask questions. I'll have you write them down. These are key points. Get people together in coaching, define performance. Here's the first question you ask. If I had a flip chart, I'd go ahead and demonstrate it, but I'd show you. You turn to the group, and you're the leader, and you have a magic marker and a flip chart, and you ask this question. What did you, if you were not a part of the group, or what did we, if you were a part, do well, and underline the word well? You write it up on the flip chart, you put a 1, draw a circle around the 1, and you stand there. What did we or you do well in this activity? In the ball game, what did we do in the last class, what did we do in the last performance, what did we do in the project we did, what did we do well? Yes, sir. Oh, excuse me. Okay. You don't answer, because if you're in a leadership role and you answer the question, they won't. You've given them the answer, and they'll shut down the whole process. Shut your mouth, have a magic marker, you put a 1 and draw a circle around it, you gotta put something by the 1, and after a couple of seconds, somebody will say, well, we messed this up, I don't want to hear about that, what worked? And they'll say, this worked, they get to brag, and you say, thank you, Jim, for your input, put a 2, turn around, say, what else? 2-word question, what else is working? And they'll say something else, and then something else, and you write it down. You don't give your contribution, because when you do, they'll stop. Now you got 5 or 6 things that are working. The next flip chart you put up, and this is a tough one, it says, if we or you could do that activity over again, what we do differently, underline differently, if anything, write that down. Get it word for word. What will we do differently, if anything? If we could do it over again, we could play this game again, if we could go to this function again, if we could do a workshop again, what will we do differently, if anything? You turn around, write a 1 on the circle around it, turn that move, and deal with the awkward silence, because nobody's going to say a word at first. And you don't answer. You stand there and look at it. What can we do differently? Don't say, what did we do wrong, what did we screw up on, what are our problems, mistakes. Those words create a negative tension. Differently is a neutral question. What do we do differently? And don't come up with this, what do we do differently, you know? Don't even do that stuff. Somebody will say something. It'll be a low threat, low value. They'll say, well, why don't we do so-and-so? That's a test for you, the leader. You say, well, that's not important. The meeting's over. Pack it in. But whatever they say, you okay, thank you very much. You know, you put 1, or then turn around and say, thanks. What else can we do differently? And pretty soon somebody else will say something. And after a few minutes, it'll get a little sensitive, and somebody will raise their finger like this and say, I know something I could have done differently yesterday. You have a little confession, a little sin. And you think the group would say, boy, that's pretty stupid. Guess what happens? They see that person is more concerned about the success of the team, and so you don't make that mistake. They're willing to put themselves at risk for the group. And they'll say, cool. And somebody else say, I can top that. I'm something a lot better than that. And you get to the good stuff. And you write it down. And they'll tell you what's not working. The third question is, what did you learn? They learned a lot today about what worked. They learned a lot today about what they could do differently. They learned a lot today about what they could have done differently, not what they did wrong. And you set goals, the things you didn't do well enough, the things you did well, you set goals to do it better, and the things you do differently, you set goals to fix them. And they go off ready for the next battle. Smart coaching. Remember, you're not doing the talking, you're doing the facilitating. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left. Any questions or comments about what we talked about? I know it's been a busy afternoon, but thoughts, questions, comments about anything we talked about before we close? Go.
On that graph, with the treat and
Yeah,
time
yeah,
and activity, on the bottom axis, what are you judging there? Like, when it
Well,
says time?
Okay, the standards are, the bottom of that upper, the zone is what time you gotta get to work. It's no typos. It's enough quantity, whatever the reference standard is. Give me you work someplace?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm doing this.
Okay.
Where's
What
the
responsibility you have?
Doing your checks.
What do they do?
Usually by Monday morning.
That's the standard. Now, they have to be 2 copies or 1.
Just one.
Okay, if it's 2, that's the standard. 1 is the standard. Has to be typed or handwritten.
Handwritten.
That's the standard. Any standard, there's 4 parts. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions? Comments? My website is peteland.com. That's not very creative. That's the best I can do. There's about 70 quotes of the day. Quotes of the day. heard some of them today, don't attribute it to me, but just go through, you hit the F5 key, it changes the code, you look at it and I find some interesting comments.
On behalf of,
Close, I got about 1 minute.
I'm sorry.
Training that brings about no change in the effect that the parachute opens on the first bounce. Not a very good parachute, opens on the first bounce. I'll tell you, I made a few parachute jumps, you don't want to take them on the first bounce. Change in behavior requires 3 steps. You've got to decide in your heart of hearts that you can do a better job. That's called unfreezing. If you value what you're doing, you never change it. But if you devalue what you're presently doing and get something better, you have a chance to change. The refreezing is when you go back and do it again and again and it locks in. Who here can ride a 2-wheel bicycle? Raise your hand. How many did it right the first time, didn't fall off? Huh? You fall off? When I fell off, I said, Mom, I have a defective bicycle. You got back on, you rode 50 feet and 100 feet. You got to get back on these bicycles here, this thing. These things are not easy to do right away. Keep the faith and work for it. If it is to be, it's up to who? Who's in charge of you? You're in charge of you. You have your own show. Our preacher said this, it says, do not stumble over things behind you. Don't drag around a bunch of grief. Somebody says something, let it go. I love this one. You have no skills, no training, no particular aptitude. I think I might have something for you as a consultant. You're done. I got 2 minutes.
on behalf of the Currency Leadership class, we'd like to present Chris Dunn and Dr. Conrad Miller, Rocky, this is what we
Thank you so much.
appreciate you coming.
Very much.